out I was depicting Bob Dole as Dracula, and of course I gave him the Nixon eyes, you know. He was billed as a guy with no sense of humor, and as a matter of fact, he had a great sense of humor. Very, very funny man. And I regret drawing that.
Good evening. Let me make just a couple of opening comments before we get started. Typically, we ask our speaker to speak for 30 minutes or so, make some opening comments, then we do Q&A. And Pat Oliphant called me some time ago and said, I'm a very shy retiring type, and I just don't like to give a formal speech. So after talking about it, we decided we would have a conversation. And during the conversation, we're going to be showing some slides up here. And then at various times when the spirit moves him, Pat is going to rise and come up to the lectern and draw. And we've installed an extra camera up here that will be right over his shoulder. And if the technology works, you'll be able to witness Pat drawing. And before this is shown on our PBS stations and C-SPAN, all of that will be edited in, so it will probably look better in the over-the-air than it does, because all the switching is tricky, and our people will make it look real good by the time it goes out. I'm very glad to welcome and recognize a couple of very special friends. Hunter Applewhite of Dominion Resources is here, and Ann Jolly is here, seated in the front. Ann Jolly is with WVPT, and they are the originating station for our PBS broadcasts that not only cover all the Virginia stations, but now an increasing number of stations out across the country. And Hunter Applewhite of Dominion Resources graciously underwrites a significant portion of the cost of the broadcasts. When you all send your check in this month to Dominion Resources, put a little note on there that says, thank you so much for underwriting the Miller Center Forum. We need the help. But we are deeply grateful for your philanthropy and your support. And we are joined tonight by our colleagues from C-SPAN, who are taping this and will be showing it in due course. Most of the time that C-SPAN comes and films programs here, they show them a number of times. And so if you have insomnia in the middle of the night, tune in and you'll be able to see anything you missed. We are co-hosting this with the generous help of our good friends at the Virginia Art Museum. We are delighted to welcome tonight Andrea Douglas, who is the curator of collections and exhibits at the Virginia Art Museum. And hidden someplace, either in this room or the other rooms, are Terry Lockhart, who chairs the museum's advisory board, and Beth Turner, who served as the interim director of the museum and now is serving the broader university as vice provost for the arts. So we have enjoyed very much this cooperation. The Virginia Art Museum is hosting a fabulous exhibit of Oliphant's work, including not only drawings but sculpture. And you are urged to go by and see it. And Pat Oliphant will be making another presentation tomorrow afternoon at this time at the Harrison Special Collections Library. So if you don't overdose this afternoon, go to the Harrison Special Collections Library tomorrow afternoon. We're also especially pleased to welcome our speaker's wife, Susan Conway. So thank you very much for being here. Book signing will follow the forum, and as always, I ask that you let our speaker get out before assaulting him, and let him get to the place where he needs to be to sign books. There's a big supply of recent books of his, and so there should be plenty for everyone who wants one. Good afternoon and welcome to the Miller Center Forum. I'm George Gillum and I chair the forum. Our guest today is Patrick Oliphant. Patrick Oliphant is Australian by birth, and this may explain his ability to remain detached and observant from afar while still casting a skeptical eye on American politics. Like many who have immigrated to this country, he arrived here in 1964. He has a deep love for the United States and respect for the highest principles and the lofty ambitions that our country represents. When he came, he roosted first at the Denver Post, where he won the Pulitzer Prize for editorial cartooning in 1967. He migrated to the Washington Star in 1975 and stayed there until it folded, no relationship we hope, in 1981. His work is now syndicated to hundreds of newspapers in this country and around the world. The New York Times called him the most influential cartoonist now working. He's won about every major award for journalism that our profession can confer. He is an equal opportunity attack dog. This is my clicker that will advance this. You can see the work he's done on the most recent president, a diminutive president wearing a ridiculous hat on this huge horse, being led by Vice President Cheney with the shotgun. But he attacks the other side too. For example, this drawing is called "The Dog That Didn't Bark." The Iraq debate and the dog all hunched over, sitting there. The man says, "Now, we aren't going to make a big fuss about this, are we?" And the dog says, "Oh, no, sir, we're a Democrat." And Punk, the little penguin over on the side, says, "The confused opposition." And he doesn't mind pushing the edges of the envelope. In fact, some might suggest that he walked so close to the line that he got some chalk dust on his shoes. This is St. Pedophilia's Catholic Church. And the caption on it is, "Celebration of Spring at St. Pedophilia's, the annual running of the choir boys." Amazon lists 16 books by Oliphant on its website, but they seem to reproduce so quickly that I suspect if we check tomorrow, there will be more of them. Please welcome Pat Oliphant.
Did you mess up my charcoal?
Oh, did we mess it?
No,
I just.
you didn't.
Please be seated. As Sarah Palin would have said, "Can I call you Pat?"
You betcha. I'm drawing her for a while. Sorry, we'll go on with our conversation.
I want to see what you have to say about Sarah Palin.
Well, there are more raunchy things that I could do with her, but C-SPAN lies, you know. I did a show like this in the Carter Center in Atlanta once, and I got so sick of the audience sitting on their hands that I started drawing raunchy things about, what was the name of the beret? You know, the one that Clinton got in trouble with.
Oh, Monica.
And Monica. And C-SPAN was there. And I thought, oh, they'll edit that out.
Yeah.
And I was getting, for months afterwards, I was getting calls in the middle of the night from people seeing this in California and God knows where else.
One of the drawings was called "A More Perfect Union" or something like that.
Yeah. The State of the Union. Oh, why not? They draw this. Well, anyway, I'll just leave it.
Makes it look easy.
Okay.
Try to get back to my other
Get back,
screen.
where were we?
Where were we? There we go. Pat, I have spent a couple of days with you now, and I can say that you are a patriot. You believe in the literal words of the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution.
Separation of church and...
Just separation of church and state. You don't hesitate to call out the high and the mighty when they fall short, which is most of the time. And in order to do what you do, it strikes me that you have got to be not only disappointed, but have a certain level of anger to do what you do.
Oh, you have to bring yourself to a boil every day, as they say, you know.
How do you get your news, and how do you work yourself up to that frothing point?
It doesn't take much, you know. I've had 8 years of good stuff. I mean, 8 years of the Bushes is just too good to be true. Now I've lost all my villains.
The Miller Center focuses on the presidency. You focus on the presidents in much of your work. What I'd like to do is to walk you through some of your drawings about some of the presidents, starting with the man who was president when you reached our shores, Lyndon Johnson. Mm-hmm. And I ask that you not hold back, but that you tell us what you really think and how these drawings reflect your views of these presidents. And of course, if you want to supplement these with additional drawings, this is...
I'll see if I can still draw Lyndon. I haven't done
Lyndon Johnson dressed up as Abraham Lincoln saying, damn it, doesn't anybody recognize me?
Lyndon, a lot of wrinkles.
I don't know why this thing isn't working.
Big ears. Like the guy we got now.
Maybe one of our technical folks can...
What's not working?
We're not getting the camera showing your drawing.
Oh, really? I mean, I'm wasting my time here. I was the only one laughing. I wondered why.
See if it can. Ah!
You remember gold in my hair?
Yes.
Want to see gold in my hair?
And all of that with your left hand.
Yes, you got to be one or the other.
This is a podium that says, "Ask me anything." And Nixon is walking off the stage, turning to one of his aides, and as he walks off the stage, he takes off a set of angel's wings and says, "I want a list of the names of all those who asked embarrassing questions."
Shall I draw him? Well,
Yes.
Let's
Or
see
just
see how far I can go on that.
Trick seems to be holding the control out here.
You want us to do it?
Pat, were some of these targets, did you just find them too easy?
I refuse to answer that.
remembers the caption?
There we go. It's a good audience. You know?
They appreciate high art. This shows Jerry Ford, President Ford, on top of a ladder, step ladder, getting ready to change a light bulb. Several broken light bulbs on the ground. Kissinger holding up the library, and a bunch of aides over on the side looking helpless. And Ford turns and says, "You Congress types are so damn smart with this foreign policy stuff. Help Henry turn the ladder."
I like Jerry Ford. I really didn't, I didn't mind him at all. He sort of, basically a decent man. I didn't want to make. This is the trouble with caricaturing people that you like. It's difficult. That's like the problem I have right now. I don't know what I'm going to do, but never mind. We'll talk about that later.
Then Jimmy Carter. Now this is a more recent Jimmy Carter. He's saying Bush is the worst president in the history of this country. There's something Carter said several weeks ago. And he said in the Senate there, "And the crowd spake thusly, Yea, Jimmy, say it for us, Jimmy. We folded on the surge vote," these are the Democrats, "but our cowardice will be redeemed by the brave Jimmy. All praise to Jimmy the Redeemer." Then in the middle he says, "But oops," and the crowd says, "What, why, what?" In the bottom, Carter is dissolving, and he says, "Did I say that? Oh, dear me. Well, I surely didn't mean it. No, not at all. I was misquoted, but that's it. I was something. I was misquoted. The
Killer rabbit.
The killer rabbit made me say it." And the crowd on the side is saying, "Oh my God, he's no better than the rest of us. We really are worthless, cowardly bums, miserable worms." And this is an attack on the Democrats who stood silently by.
Jimmy annoyed me. I think it was the piety that got to me. And as I drew him year after year, he got shorter and shorter. And so I set him on a chair, his feet wouldn't hit the ground. And there was always this guy. There you go. The killer rabbit. How's that guy scared of a rabbit? Yeah, see, he annoyed me. Yeah. His teeth, yeah, they were another annoying thing.
Here we have President Reagan on his horse with the sheriff's badge. On the other horses are, on the famished, gone horses are disease, poverty, ignorance, war, Nicaragua. And Reagan is tipping his hat to Nicaragua and saying, no, that's not the gang I'm looking for, ma'am. I'm after communists. Yeah. Did you have a soft spot for Reagan? Did you like Reagan as a man?
What I was trying to get around was everybody's opinion that he was a good guy.
Yeah.
And that was hard work.
Yeah.
Because everybody liked him.
Yeah.
And that's not a good situation. But he had a few cartoonists down to the White House for lunch one day. And Reagan, R-E-G-A-N, let him in, and they sat down. And Reagan reached in his pocket and came out with these cards and said, well, I want to tell you that the first thing I look at every day in the paper is the comic strips. And we're all political cartoonists, so we thought this was going to be a long, long lunch. And he hung around, he started enjoying himself, and they'd set up an easel at the other end of the room. And after a while, he got up and he went down to the easel and he drew something. It looked like this, and I hate wasting paper on it. It was sort of, it looked like this. And had a cigarette. And that was it. And he walked back to his seat. And I still don't know to this day what that was. Anybody can tell me. I don't know what that was. But then Reagan started getting impatient, saying, he never stays this late, and rumble, mumble, mumble. He took us back in the back room, showed us all the Impressionist paintings back there. And Reagan was getting really steamed. He'd like to be in charge. But we got through it all right.
Here is comment on the way public relations people and aides depict their candidates. President Bush, 41, on the left, what they try to sell, and then over on the right as he is perceived. This may have been the first one where Bush, 41, is drawn holding a purse. And then down below is Governor Dukakis, what they tried to sell, sort of Zorba the Greek. And then over on the right, this diminutive, tiny little figure as he is perceived. It's called altered egos.
George Bush. Wasted a good piece of paper on that. And I tended to draw him like this. Big glasses. I've always made him wear glasses because he was very concerned that glasses would make him look like a wimp. And for all the people who wear glasses, I gave him glasses. Bit more of a smile, George. Because you've got to remember he gave us George too. And so
The emperor displays his new wardrobe.
Want to see the other side?
Bill Clinton burning the biscuits.
Staying home and cooking cookies.
Hillary's got a whip, and it says, "I hope you didn't think you're just going to stay home and bake cookies." And the punk down in the corner is saying, "Someone's got to carry her baggage." And then the last one of the presidents, George Bush 43, walking in, tossing his dad the car keys. He says, "I totaled the nation, Daddy. Thanks for letting me use it." He says, "You're welcome, son. Are you okay?" "Not a scratch. I just ran over some liberal trash, like Social Security, health care, Medicare, etc." 41 says, "Well, that's fine, son." 43 says, "I wiped out the environment too, Daddy, straight through the storefront. You should have seen the mess." He said, "Wow, anybody complain?" "No, everyone was asleep. Then I slammed it in reverse and really clobbered education. Whoops, what did the cops say?" "Not a thing. I told them I was out looking for WMDs. They apologized and took off." "See any Democrats while you were out, son?" "Only the cops, Daddy." Pretty harsh comment on the public, the presidents, and the opposition. He slammed them all in 6 little panels.
So it was a good day.
Obama. This is called ownership. "The black vote is mine, Obama. I've pandered to it for years. I've taken it for granted for years. It's mine by right, Obama." And he's saying, "It's mine, Clinton. Who has a greater right to it?"
Now I hit the rocks. Like I said before, it's difficult. I've lost all my villains, and I've got this guy I may like. And he hasn't settled down into being a caricature yet, because it's preferable if you don't like who you're drawing. But thank God for his ears. You know, having a president of color is a pain in the ass. You got to fill everything in. Even if I like him. It'll improve as we go along in time. See, that shouldn't be there, that should be in there. Things, it'll work out.
Let's see, what have we got here? Somehow we've kind of gotten ahead of ourselves.
What are you doing?
I'm just clicking them back and forth randomly.
You're just enjoying yourself.
Yeah. Pat, the news media.
Yeah.
This one is called "Whatever Happened to the News, You May Ask." The handsome, vacuous host is saying, "And now the courts must decide who gets custody of the celebrity blonde's body and who gets to be named the father of her child." And the female anchor says, in other words, in other news, 12 more U.S. soldiers died in Iraq today. And then the man says, "But this, just in, Britney Spears has shaved her head." And the woman says, "And that's the news." And the vacuous male says, "And hey, may all your news be good news."
And they all look at each other,
Yeah.
take turns looking at each other.
Yeah, yeah.
Closely.
Close. So what is going to happen to hard news? Is hard news over? Where is it going to go?
Where do they put it? I mean, they don't leave room for hard news in newspapers anymore. The newspapers are getting smaller. Even the New York Times is getting smaller and smaller.
What do you think about Rupert Murdoch?
Probably not a good idea that I say anything like that. We have C-SPAN here, and they don't edit.
We're PBS.
Okay.
Rupert Murdoch offers $5 billion for the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah. My first newspaper job was in Adelaide, Australia, where Rupert Murdoch had just inherited the Adelaide News, which was his first newspaper, which was a tabloid, of course. The typefaces were the exact same typefaces he uses today in the New York Post. I mean, New York, what is it, the New York?
The Post.
Post, yeah. And he's just dragged everything down to that level. It's the Adelaide News in 1953.
How long did you last as an employee of Mr. Murdoch's?
About 4 months. Then I decided that I moved to the opposition at the other end of town and became a copy boy there. And a copy aide, they call them now. Copy.
No gender.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And then became the cartoonist through being there a while, and did cartooning there and for some time. But where were we? We were talking about Rupert, and he's a very dangerous man, and he's taken over some of the key things. I think the next thing is New York Times. He'll have a go at the New York Times. He loved the New York Times.
It would be the crown jewel after getting the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah.
You jump on the press, as you do the loyal opposition, for not doing their job. This drawing shows Cheney in the bunker. Cheney is saying, "What are they doing now?" And Bush is up on a ladder looking out, and he said, "I think we're off the hook, Uncle Dick. They've all gone off chasing some guy named Imus." Would the newspapers be suffering such hard times financially if they got back to doing what they used to do, which is to report hard news?
I don't know if there's time enough to do it, whether it's gone past the point of no return and they just can't get back.
And so where will you and the other great editorial cartoonists place your work? Where will we be able to see it 3 years from now, 5 years from now?
Tell me. The internet, I guess. We're transitioning, I think. Have to.
So it'll be on the web someplace?
Yeah, it's a better audience, bigger audience.
Yeah.
And the reproduction's better. And they don't mess around with the size like they do in newspapers, and they don't print it on blotting paper like they do.
You have been accused of getting a little bit close to the line.
No. When? What? Oh, you. Oh.
Condoleezza Rice holding a whip.
I forgot the spurs.
Yeah, you forgot this one. Do I make myself clear? The United States doesn't do torture. Do I make myself clear? And then this one, very famous cartoon of Ted Kennedy driving a car with Jimmy Carter in diving gear looking terrified.
What was close to the line about that?
What is the line between hard criticism and just slipping over to utter tastelessness? How do we stay on this side?
Oh God, how do I answer that? Well, you just got to draw on your reserves of what you think is right.
How many times have newspapers refused to run your
Oh God,
drawings?
a lot of times, I think. Yeah.
And how do you react to that? How do you deal with that? What do you do?
I don't know which ones they are. I never there's no tracking device that I can tell whether they've used it or not. They buy my cartoons every week, and whether they use them or not is it's their privilege.
Have you ever changed a cartoon at the instance of the editors?
No.
So you send it out, and either they use it or they
That's
don't
right.
use it.
Yeah, it has to be that way. I'm getting mad. I mean, it's if they don't want to run it, then that's their problem.
I think we are in the presence not only of someone who has terrific talent, but also is one of the ones who is the most vigilant in defending a lot of the things that our country stands for. And so please join me in thanking Pat before we get into the question and answer.
I hope I can answer the questions.
And now you've got to answer the questions. Those who have questions that you would like to ask, please queue up in the back there with my colleague Christina Lopez-Guattardi. When I was in graduate school here in the history department, one of my favorite classmates was Michael Broom. Michael is a very, very smart historian, and he did his PhD dissertation on the history of political cartooning in the mid-19th century. And Mike is now living in Washington, but I asked him to come down today and ask the first question.
One of the things that jumps out at you immediately when you're looking at old political cartoons, the way I did, as George says, for a couple of years there, is that the really old cartoons tend to rely a lot more on wordplay and on large blocks of text, and that sort of falls away as time goes on. I was wondering how you sort of strike the balance between imagery and caricature and wordplay. Do you try to limit the amount of text that's in?
Yes, but I don't mind text if it fits with the cartoon. Words are good. Nothing wrong with words if they are in tune with the cartoon and what you're saying, and the grammatical things like that, and everything balances out. So the idea that the best cartoon is the one with no caption is silly. The words are just as important if you're using them as the drawing. It's all communication, and we don't do those long lumbering captions they used to do. But I think we're at about the right place right now.
Do you do the drawing first and then the caption, or do you think of the caption and then?
It all comes along sometimes all at once, but I leave the caption till last because it should work with the card. The wording should be in tune with the drawing, and I love it. Of course, I love drawing, but writing is fun too.
Pat, I was wondering whether you would sign and date that packet of sketches that you've made here and let us have a spontaneous auction to raise some money for the Miller Center, and I will start the bidding at $500.
Matter of fact, that's what we usually do. Use it, leave it to the institution so that they can do just that. We did that at the Truman Center in Missouri, yeah, last year. They raised a lot of money, $5,000, $10,000. I don't forget what it was, but it's my way of giving back, I suppose. Yeah. I better sign these.
Well, I'm just thrilled that you're here. I love your cartoons, and I'm very curious about the Pulitzer Prize. And I was reading the remarks that have been written up for today, and your quote about it was jingoism in being awarded the Pulitzer. And I wonder what your feelings are about the Pulitzer Prize now.
I think it's a political award. I think it's an arrangement worked out between newspapers. You give me this one this year, and I'll give you this one next year. That's what I think. And to reinforce that, if you look at the best cartoon, probably the best cartoon drawn in the second half of the 20th century, drawn by Bill Malden when Kennedy was assassinated. It was a cartoon without a caption, but it's called The Weeping Lincoln. He's got his hand over his face. Best cartoons drawn at huge speed and on deadline. All the things that the requisites for winning a Pulitzer were there. And they gave it to Paul Conrad. And Malden found out later, talking to some people on the board, on the judging committee, it was admitted to him by a guy in the Dayton Daily News who had been on the committee that there'd been some dealing on this best cartoon drawn in probably the 20th century. And so I have no respect for them. Anyway, what are awards? Who's to say who's best at anything? And I think you're as good as you were yesterday. So, no, I don't like the Pulitzer.
Can you talk about the creation of Punk the Penguin and how his role may have evolved over time in your cartoons?
Yeah, he was born of frustration when I worked in Australia. I worked for a very conservative newspaper, which was the Advertiser, the second paper I went to. And the situation was that I was the young cartoonist who didn't know anything, and the editors knew everything. And they would, our editorial meeting was in the early afternoon, about 2, something like that, after they'd come back from their clubs full of claret and sparked with genius because they knew how to compose a cartoon. And there's a lot of editors around like that, but in those days everyone was there. There was the chief of staff, the managing editor, the executive managing editor, the assistant executive managing editor, and the guy who drove the elevator. And they were all there to pound this cartoon together on their own anvil. And it gets rather tiring after a while, so I invented him, or he invented me, one or the other, to get my own ideas into my own cartoon. And that was in 1955. Yeah. And he's been with me ever since. Sometimes he's a nuisance. You're trying to think up another cartoon. In effect.
Sir, these 4 rooms, I'm sure, are filled with amateur cartoonists who find it frustrating that their thoughts can't make it all the way down their arm to their hand and onto the paper. Is there anything that you can tell us that might help along that line? And also, we noticed that you draw with your left hand. When you sign your name, do you use your right hand, or are you a lefty?
I'm a lefty. Oh, that other one, your first question reminds me of a young fellow called Bill Mitchell, who's a very enthusiastic young fellow who came in to see me. I met him at the Smithsonian when I was doing a speech, and And he asked me, how do I go about this? I want to be a cartoonist. And he'd ridden a bike from California to Washington to ask me that. And so I said, I gave him the best answer I could: draw every day, and get an idea every day, commit it to paper, and do it, and do it, and do it. And I thought I'd never see him again. A year later, he came back. He had a year's worth of very good cartoons. And I thought, my God, that works. And so that's the advice I would give to anybody: is just draw all the time. Draw everything you can.
David,
and force yourself to get ideas. It's not easy just to, especially in days when you just don't feel like doing this. And eventually it becomes a compulsion, I suppose. Yeah.
The New York Times columnist David Brooks was here a couple of years ago and said that in response to a question, you have no idea how hard it is to be brilliant twice a week. And you do it 3 or 4 times a week.
3 a week, yeah.
Yeah, Pat, I have a question. Do you ever have anything you consider taboo?
Oh, in the obvious things like people who are disadvantaged, being crippled or damaged, or you certainly don't make fun of that. Although when after George Wallace got shot, I drew him in a wheelchair. That's where he was. And I got all sorts of mail saying, how could you do that? Well, that's where he was. It didn't matter that I didn't like George Wallace, but the fact was that you have to draw the situation as it is. That's it.
What do you think that Barack Obama's greatest vulnerabilities will be that you can begin to highlight? What are the areas that you're going to be looking for? Delivery on these promises, and with some sort of sympathy for what the poor guy has to do. I guess there'd be a honeymoon period, but... How long are you going to give him? Tomorrow? How's that? He's already been sworn in twice. He's got tenure.
A number of years ago, I had the opportunity to see you with John Eaton.
Oh, yeah.
And I wanted you to
Wasn't that a mess?
Pardon?
John Eaton's a pianist.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
And also an excellent musical historian.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to know, because you apparently had a great friendship with John, do you have a great interest in music?
Oh, yeah. Well, I love music, love what John does. So we thought we'd put a show together. Where did we do that, Susan?
George Washington, at George Washington University.
George Washington University. They got a lovely auditorium sort of thing there, sort of in the semi-round. And John was at the piano, and I was supposed to draw along at the same time. And we had it all carefully figured out. Yeah, shut up. And I'd forget my lines. It was a mess. And we did it for 3 nights, and that was it. Did it get better or worse? I think it got worse, actually. So we won't do that again. We remained very good friends.
I see in the notes that it said someone sent you all over the world to study other cartoonists.
Yeah, oddly enough, that newspaper that I first worked for did
I
that.
seem to see a lot of punch in your drawings, but I don't see a lot of Malden or Conrad. Who are your influences?
Daumier was one early on. A lot of the English cartoonists who really committed to paper some beautiful work in the pages of Punch. So you're right that I was influenced by that stuff. And Australia has a very good tradition of what we call black and white art, which is black ink on a white paper. And so I had all this stuff around me all my life, but I didn't have access to American cartoonists very much. Malden I'd seen, Conrad I saw later in Pages of Time, but that was about it. So.
Mr. Oliphant, do people come to you and say, I have this great idea, could you draw this cartoon?
Yes. And no, I won't.
Well, I haven't. But for your last thing, could you draw us one? I'm thinking of the 2 swearing-in ceremonies that we've had this week. Does that do anything for you?
Think about that, yeah. We get 2 presidents.
It's been in the news a lot. You've probably been too busy here.
I had to draw him twice.
I was also curious whether or not you have, do you seek out international news for your sources sometimes to see what's going on else, reactions elsewhere to U.S.
Oh yeah, because a lot of what goes on in Israel and places like that, everything seems to affect this country, and this country seems to affect everything. So it's all my stuff is either national or international. I don't have a local sort of thing. I suppose when I was working in Washington, the local news was national news. Yeah.
I assume that at one time or another you may have done a cartoon which you later regretted doing. If so, and I'm going to ask, which one would you say you most regretted doing?
Oh, for a while I was depicting Bob Dole as Dracula. And he had, I don't know if I can draw Bob Dole anymore. But I can try.
Was that influenced by his wife's role with the Red Cross?
I love it. I love it. And of course I gave him the Nixon eyes, you know. I'm doing this totally from memory. I just don't know. I always gave him this Nixonish sort of shadow. And he was billed as a guy with no sense of humor and sort of dour and humorless. As a matter of fact, when I met him in subsequent years, I don't mind meeting politicians when they're not in office anymore. And he had a great sense of humor, very, very funny man. And you look something like that. And I regret drawing that. Not much regret, but some regret.
Could you close with John McCain?
Oh, God. Couldn't we go back to Sarah?
Yeah.
Sarah and the Moose?
Yes, yes.
No. She's seen what I do with Sarah and the Moose.
Yeah.
But at my auction, well. Oh, all right, I will.
We can cut it out from the television version.
Sure. Yeah, they edit on C-SPAN. No, I better not. I've got to go home tonight. Chicken that I am.
This is the first time you've ever backed away. Your editor has intimidated you.
Edited by the missus.
We have seen a first. Thank you very much, Pat Oliphant.